So, I think we should start our meeting. Dear ladies and gentlemen, liebe Botschafter, ambassadors, excellencies, dear guest speakers of the panel, I'm really glad to welcome you here in the Austrian Academy of Science, here in this beautiful surrounding. And I think there is enough opportunity to walk out and to talk to each other, which is extremely important to build up networks. At the beginning of that week, I read in an interesting article in the Austrian newspaper, Der Standard. This is a red newspaper, red because of the color, not because of the political orientation. The article was titled "The Long Road to Equality." The article reported some positive facts. The proportion of women on the supervisory boards in the 200 most rich Austrian companies has doubled from 14% 2014 to 27% 2022. Likewise, the proportion of the female CEOs rose from 6%, not much, to 12%. So there is a doubling of this number, and this is the good news. The bad news are linked to the fact that we need another 20 or 30 years to reach equality. Why the process is so tough? I think it has mainly to do with the gender-specific role, and these roles are so deeply engraved in our society. And this is what the article explained, and this was written down. You cannot get rid of them so easily. The article reported of an experimental study. A man and a woman came to an HR manager, to human resource manager. They both have 2 children. And who gets the job? Correct, the man. The HR managers suspect that the woman will be frequently absent because her children get sick. That the man's children also be sick. This fact is totally neglected in the view of the HR managers. The article reported on another study addressing gender-specific self-confidence and self-assessment. When a management task is to distribute in a company, who speaks up? The man. Here I am. I want to take the leadership position in a company. They are more risk. They are showing more risk behavior, not only in the labor market, also in the life outside of the labor market, driving fast, dying more often, also shorter life expectancy. That's the other side of the coin. I share this experience of self-confidence. In one of my positions before I became here president, I was vice rector at the University of Vienna and responsible for the HR agenda. I made many recruitments. Women said, hopefully, Mr. Fassmann, hopefully I will make it, and the salary you offer me is. Men have said, I want more responsibility, and the salary you offered me needs an increase of 20%, 25% or more. I don't want to generalize, but these are more or less for me typical experience in this situation of an HR process. When we change the situation, yes, we can do. Fathers and mothers can avoid stereotypes when raising children. We need to look critically at school textbooks to see whether they contain gender-specific role models. And we can argue that maybe female STEM scientists should be part of this school textbooks. You and I, we all are role models when it comes to distribute the unpaid housework equally, and much more. At the ÖAW, it's the Austrian Academy of Science, we pay great attention to ensure that women also take leadership roles. We analyze the gender pay gap annually to check whether we are gender blind when it comes to the wages. I think this is really important. We check the leaky pipeline to see whether female leadership is changing positively. We have organized a great exhibition showing successful women in science and so forth and so on. Where there is a will, there is a way. For the first time in 175 years history, academic history of the Austrian Academy of Science, 50% of the presiding committee is female. I realize it without any quota. And the Gelehrtengesellschaft, the Hall of Fame, followed my advice because I want to do it. The same was true in my time as minister. More than half of the directors general were and still are female. There are so many qualified women in science in the public here, but they don't stand up and say loudly, here I am. But we have to look around and we will find them. I'm sure together we can achieve change by making structures for female career development, by empowering our female colleagues, and by giving women visibility in the public sphere, in the universities, in the academies. And I'm quite optimistic we can change something and we will get there. I have to say thank you very much, the organizers, for initiating and creating such a wonderful event. I'm impressed by the list of speakers. I'm impressed by the list of attendance to this meeting. If I would have time, I would stay. I have a meeting with the responsible persons for science and culture in the Vienna government. And it's a bright woman. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
What do you want to be? Who do you want to become when you are grown up? So many options, so many choices, so many possibilities to explore. Close your eyes, and in that gentle darkness, listen to the whispers of your heart. What do you truly love to do? Trust your dreams, follow your path. Some people may not believe in you. Show them you can do it. Surround yourself with friends who believe in you and support you, no matter what choices you make. Friends that challenge you to go even further than you ever thought possible. Don't let anything hold you back. Be an inspiration. The exciting world of science is yours to explore. Let's all join forces, all of us, coming from different countries, having different cultural backgrounds. We are united in our thirst for knowledge, in our love for science. Together, we can achieve anything.
Very warm welcome to today's event. We are very excited having so many people here in the ÖAW. And also we are having followers today at Zoom. So we have a full audience following us remotely to today's event, Women in Science Breaking Frontiers. I want to start by thanking all the embassies, the diplomatic missions here in Vienna, Austria, helping to organize this event and mark this day for International Women's Day coming up. And I would actually like to start this wonderful day with a few words about my journey. So today is not about me, but still I think it's a bit, it's interesting because I actually started my career in diplomacy. So 5 years ago, I represented Austria to the United Nations in Geneva. And this was actually my dream career. So I've worked very hard to get there. And once I was there, I loved it. But there was some fire inside of me burning. Some fire that told me with technology, you can reach so many people and impact so many lives at once if you create this one thing that can help so many at a time. So also 5 years ago, I took this decision to quit my dream job and go into the unknown. I started an AI company together with my brother, who actually was the person also supporting me a lot because he was the machine learning architect who said, yes, we can do it, and I need exactly you to do it. And so we started our own venture. Also 5 years ago, I spoke the first time about women in AI Austria. Actually, I joined the network Women in AI as a global initiative in Geneva, and I got very inspired from the women I saw there. It was an event at the applied machine learning days in Lausanne. And once I went to Vienna to start my own company, they said, why don't you start the Austrian chapter? And to be fair, I'm a lawyer, a human rights lawyer. I thought I can't because I would be a fraud. How can I represent a network of women in artificial intelligence having studied law? And so I was very reluctant at first. And my brother actually kept pushing me. He said, you know what? I'm just going to explain to you what you need to know. And there's so many other basically skills you need to build up such a network. You can do it and I will support you. And most importantly, AI is not about technology. It's about how our life will be impacted in the following years. And so very funnily, the first time I spoke about women in AI was at a very technical meetup. It's called Deep Learning Meetup Vienna. And I was confronted with 300 guys and 10 women in the audience staring at me. And I was on stage talking on why we need more women in AI. And it was the mark of something great. And from there, I decided to organize a big event called, which was on AI and diplomacy. And in this event, more than 100 people joined. And also the core team of the NGO Women in AI Austria uh, got to know each other. So basically, the people who came thought it was so important to get this started. So we started an NGO, a few of us, let's say 6 people starting to do this. And today we are more than 100 women, out of which 40 are extremely active, pushing for more gender diversity in the field of AI, pushing for being seen, showing that in expertise. There is no excuse for inviting only men on a panel because we have the anthropologist, we have the data scientist, the mathematician, the lawyer, the sociologists, all of us dealing with this topic from a different angle. And this is exactly what is needed also. So, also, this brought me to the point that I'm standing here today, representing women in STEM as a lawyer. Still, maybe to be honest, sometimes this question of legitimacy. However, I know that it needs all of us, and this is why we are here discussing from various angles and various topics on how to get more women into this amazing field that can really help us decide the future that works for us all. And with this, I would like to introduce, also thank you. And with this, I would like to introduce the first panelist, Maureen Clerk. She is director of the INRIA Center, French Institute for Digital Science and Technology at the University of Côte d'Azur. Thank you. Big applause. Then Sarah Dalledonne. She is research fellow with the lead on regulatory affairs at the European Space Policy Institute. Big applause. And Maria Teresa Ferretti. She counts more than 15 years of global experience in brain research, specializing in Alzheimer's disease and gender medicine. Perfect. Is this working? Yeah, perfect. So, hello, everyone. It's good to see you on this panel. I would like to start out actually with you giving a bit of an introduction about yourself, what you're currently working on, and what you're excited about to be here today.
Who starts? Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Maria Teresa Ferretti. I'm a neuroscientist and neuroimmunologist. I have pretty much typical academic career in my history. So I did my PhD at McGill University in Canada, and then I studied as a postdoc at the University of Zurich. I am still currently doing research in the field of Alzheimer. That's my main interest right now with the Karolinska Institute. And I'm a privat docent at the Uni and a fellow of the European Academy of Neurology. So my passion is the brain. But something happened during my career, something similar actually to what you mentioned, because I started to notice something in my studies, that these differences between men and women in my topic, in Alzheimer, in neuroscience, were something that possibly were there, but nobody was talking about them. It was not considered an interesting topic, and I was curious about it, so I started to investigate, and it turns out that it's such an interesting topic from a scientific but also societal point of view, that I actually decided to create an NGO to study this, to lead research groups and awareness and advocacy activities to really put gender medicine, because that's what we are talking about, gender medicine, on the global agenda. So I've been involved in a lot of activities, both at the research side of things, so papers, textbooks, lectures, but also I feel a lot as a scientist the responsibility of raising awareness. So talking about these topics to the lay public, to the society. So also a lot of lectures, workshops. I gave 2 TEDx talks and so on. And I also had a chance to work with patient organizations and policymakers, actually. And that, as a scientist working in the lab, I was never exposed to that. So it was a great learning for me. And understanding that you can make the most amazing discovery you want. You can publish all the Nature papers you want. But if the policymakers are not aware of it, if they don't know about it, nothing happens in the society. People are not impacted by your research. So this is also one of the things I like to talk about also with young researchers, that we have a responsibility, and it's important to be in this type of events. And in the case of gender medicine, this is extremely important. Maybe later we will talk about some facts. But there is research, there is evidence, there is scientific consensus on some topics, on some others not. We are very much behind. But I hope with this event, we can actually get together and have some ideas of what do we do with this evidence? How can we translate this evidence into an improvement, especially for women in medicine, so that we can, they can benefit of all this research, and everybody, both men and women, can get the optimal diagnosis and treatment. So I'm very excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Maria. So I would directly hand over for a quick introduction to you, Sarah. Please tell us more about your current projects and what you're currently working on. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And firstly, thank you for the invitation. It's a great honor to be here today. We have something in common. I'm also a lawyer. So the question of legitimacy on talking about STEM sometimes come in, but I will do my best. So I'm a research fellow at the European Space Policy Institute. This is a think tank based in Vienna, focusing directly on space. So I will be here representing the space community. And within the context of the organization, I'm the lead for the Space as an Asset portfolio. So I'm working on everything that relates to what we need to do to act and protect the space environment, from a question of space situation awareness, space traffic management, the ability and the capability to launch our own satellite in space, but also to deal with the question of space debris. So everything that relates to space debris mitigation and space debris remediation. On top of that, I'm an independent contractor at Flinders University in Australia. And I'm also the space law expert at the University of Bologna. During my academic path, and especially when I was doing LLM at the International Labour Organization in International Trade Law, and LLM at the McGill University in space law, I was here multiple times a sentence that, it come into your mind and you cannot stop it. And it was like, you should act more like a man. This is, I don't know how many of you have had to deal with this sentence, but both in my academic path and then afterwards also when I start working in the sector, this is a sentence that you hear multiple times and it drives you on something. This is why actually last year, together with a few really brilliant women in the space community, we decided to also create the chapter of Women in Aerospace Austria. So Women in Aerospace Europe is an association that deals with the space community, and it's based in the Netherlands. And they have, similarly to what you're doing for AI, local chapters. So in June last year, we decided to create this association. Actually, the president of the association is in the room, so please raise your hand, and I'm sure we'll have a question for her. And we did the launch event last year at BMK, which is the Austrian ministry in charge of space affairs in Austria. On top of that, of course, I'm also presenting conference and workshop and organizing event and so on. And what was really interesting is that I did some maths actually of the last 3 years of me maybe being moderator or speaker in panels. And actually there was a percentage of 10% where I had the possibility of being in a panel with another woman, or even moderating a panel that it was not a full wall men-dominated panel. So in a sense, it's really interesting and bring me what for me is the most important things of having role models. And I think this is really what we are trying to do here, of really finding a way of having a sector where other women can feel can identify with and can mirror, can be represented, because this is what then drives you to dream about your possibility and your career in the sector. So I think I will stop here, but thank you.
We will get back to some of the things you said. Very interesting. Thank you. Maureen, please.
Hi. Well, I'm trained as a mathematician. I always liked mathematics as a kid, and I thought it was a nice way of being able to describe the world in a way. But I'm also passionate about music, so it's math and music. And when I was young, I was thinking, how could I bring the two together? It was a kind of a dream I had. But eventually I did more math, and I think the music only came quite recently into my career. Math was interesting for me, but sometimes it's true that it's very male dominated. You mentioned 10%. I had always the impression of being a bit in the lower 10% of the people I was with. And the first experience I had of this sort was in high school when I was about 15. And the math teacher, to the beginning of the year, said to the class, "Yeah, look at what he did. It's a good idea he had." So I went to him. I said, "Well, I'm not a man. I'm a woman." He said, "Oh, but you're good in math, so I thought you were a man." Oh, wow. So that was I mean, I hadn't got that impression before, but I realized that people had really very strong stereotypes. And then later I had a female math teacher who encouraged me to aim high, and who gave me some role models of a lady who had been in her class a few years before, who had done very well. She said, "You could do as well as her." So that helped. But then later in my studies, when I was doing a PhD, I started to play with math concepts called wavelets, and their wavelets really resonated in music for me, because it's a way of decomposing time series and little like musical notes. So I was really happy with wavelets, and I could express myself with wavelets. And then later on, I joined a group who was I was working in computer vision, because wavelets can also be applied in 2 dimensions in space. So I was doing pictures at digital photography and stuff like that. And then people that I was working with were moving to understand how the brain does vision, not just computer vision, but also how the brain does vision, to then re-inject this knowledge into computer vision. And I started also becoming passionate about the brain, actually, and studying brain imaging and brain signals, using again wavelets or using other techniques. And then I joined an institute for digital science and technology in France, which is called INRIA, which is the main institute in that domain. And there it was really nice to be able to express interdisciplinarity. So I worked with a lot of clinicians, and okay, little by little, I did also brain-computer interfaces, and that was fascinating. I came to Graz, where there's a great conference on brain-computer interfaces, and I met many role models of brain-computer interfaces here in Austria. But then 5 years ago, I was asked to maybe do a career change, because after 20 years of research, I was asked to consider directing the institute that I was working in. So now I'm the head of the 600, 700 people. So it's another type of work, but I think is good. And I often hear young female scientists that are happy that I took on this job, because it shows them that things are possible. So that's really an exciting job to be ahead.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So on this first panel, we are discussing how we can boost research by having more women in STEM fields. And so I want to address the first question to all of you. Are we actually paying a price for not having enough women? What are we missing out? Which opportunities are we actually not taking advantage of, not having enough women in STEM fields and research as such?
So I think when we need to address this question, there is, oh, sorry, you will have to repeat multiple times today. I think when we need to address this question, there are 2 types of layers. The first one is related to the fact that an environment, any type of environment that has women, of course, it's more sustainable, more competitive, have more competitiveness, and in a sense, it creates an environment for everyone dealing with that is for sure a plus. This is not related to any other type of activities. I mean, we are talking a lot about interdisciplinary, and this is what I mean, is the fact that when you create diversity and inclusion in any type of environment, this has an advantage on the environment you're working on. Then when we focus on STEM, and I mean, I'm coming for a completely different sector, but the fact is that when you work on space, you really need to a bit know about everything. It's such a niche community, at least for now, that we need to deal with science, economy, political expertise, and legal expertise. So I had to a bit start dealing with all those aspects. And here it's really what is the role of government, the role of industry, the role of academia on dealing with that. And we can, of course, go in details and see what are the policies, but the fact that it has to be something that comes to all of those actors together. Of course, it could be a top-down approach where you have government taking the lead and implementing strategies, policy, or roadmap. It could be more based on the academia or in the industry, where you actually start with soft initiative and then you push that to go in the higher level. But it has to be multiple actors who are dealing with that for sure.
Maureen, I want to jump to you because we also heard that it's different fields and interdisciplinarity. So how do you actually, as coming from the core science of mathematics, see the importance of interdisciplinary teams and having diverse also backgrounds, not only gender diversity, but also the background diversity in science and STEM?
Yes, indeed. I summarized my career, which showed going from math to brain analysis and brain-computer interfaces and working with clinicians. I had myself quite a road from one discipline to interdisciplinarity. And I noticed along that road that there were more and more women around me. And I think it's because well, I mean, not only the women from biology or from clinical domain, but I had the ability to work with more women from computer science who were interested in working with doctors or biologists, etc. And I had the feeling, and maybe I haven't got the figures, I haven't crunched all the figures yet, but that teams in which we consider more interdisciplinary problems attract more women. So we could wonder why are they prone to take more risks? Maybe in their career, maybe they feel that their career might be a bit blocked in only one discipline, and that opening up to another discipline, they might have more originality. Maybe they are more original. Maybe they have original ideas. Maybe there are many assumptions we could make, and to be interesting to study that. So it has been studied. I read a paper crunching numbers actually on Scopus, and finding that indeed there was a correlation between gender diversity and interdisciplinarity. And to come back to also the question you asked before about what are we missing? I think we are missing maybe that's environments in which it's mostly male or maybe more stressful because they're less oriented towards all the balance you need in your life. And that if we have more women in teams, in all teams, whether administrative, I mean, you need gender balance in all domains, not only science, of course, but I think to make work a nice place to be, we need just diversity, just basic. And of course, when we try to recruit people, also if we had double candidates from which to choose from, we would have much better choices. Also, sometimes we have to recruit people who come from countries very, very far away because they're not trained. We don't find them trained close to where we live, and to be just nice to have more choice.
And if I can just add to this and give an example. Okay, I lost the pen. The example from gender medicine actually is an example of an extremely interdisciplinary topic. When I started to look into these differences between men and women and how relevant they are for medicine, I was asking this question. I was asking, if you have a man with Alzheimer and a woman with Alzheimer, will they look the same? Shall we treat them in the same way? How do the biomarkers look like? I had very specific questions. And the first reaction that I got when I started was, the big professors, male professors, I have to say, of the establishment of my field telling me, Maria Teresa, why are you wasting time with this stuff? It's not, we have bigger problems. That was the answer that I got. And it's less now, but you still get it once in a while. And I think now in hindsight, this is a big problem. When we are talking about gender medicine, we are talking about precision medicine. We are saying people are not all equal. You cannot have a one size fits all in medicine. Sex and gender both have an effect. So we are talking about big things, like not diagnosing people, huge side effects of drugs in women, big problems. So what I'm trying to say here is that this was a problem that was not seen at all back then in the community. And what we are missing by not having women in doing science is exactly this, bringing new questions, new topics. Because if you look and check who is doing gender medicine research, it's actually the vast majority are women. There are really statistics showing that it's much higher the probability if the first author or the last author of a study is a woman, it's much higher the probability that the paper actually stratifies the data by sex, instead of adjusting by sex, and really look into these topics. So for some reason that I still have a hard time to understand, gender medicine is seen as a woman discipline. It is not, because we are talking about precision medicine, and if we get the proper treatment, both men and women will benefit from it. But it is true that this is a type of question that somehow men didn't come up with. Let's put it this way, or the men who did were not listened to. So when you have more women in research, what you have is diversity of perspectives and bringing new questions, new ideas that are, they're fresh, they're new, they're interesting, they're relevant. So that's what I think, why I think beyond, there are a lot of reasons why we need more women in science. But as a scientist, for the quality of the science that we do, I think that's huge. We are missing out not having more women and their perspectives. So that's what I wanted to say.
In brain research, there had been many studies on differences between female and male brains, right? Do you have something to say about the brains?
And it always comes, and it's really a dreaded one. I'm curious to see so the question they ask me is, are brain from men and women different? And I tend to ask it to the audience because I'm curious to see what people think. So do you think, so I'm gonna question it like, so do you think that the brain, the shape, the morphology of the brain is different between men and women? Are brains sexually dimorphic? That's the proper way. Who thinks yes? Very few people, not anybody. Okay, nobody. Maybe. It is not an easy question to answer. There is no straight answer. I would like you to just, before answering that question, I would like you to think about some stats. Because it's about how the brain gets sick. So if you think of, for instance, migraine, which is a neurological disease, 80% of patients are women. In Alzheimer's, 2/3 of patients are women. Multiple sclerosis, 2/3 of patients. Chronic pain, majority of women. Autoimmune disorders is up to 90% all women. Parkinson's disease is more men. And stroke, mid-age, is also more men. And so on. So there are diseases that affect the brains of men in a different way from the brains of women. So if you go and measure the brain with a scale, and you really measure things and check who is bigger, what is larger, and all that, there are some studies that have shown some minor differences in terms of shape. Some of them tend to be consistent. The brain of men is slightly larger than women on average, and some structures tend to show some very slight differences. I don't think that these tiny morphological differences can actually justify these huge differences that we see at the clinical level. So where I think brains are different is how they work and how they respond when there is a damage, when there is a stroke, when there is some type of attack, pathology. We respond differently to pathology. And this is most likely due to biological differences, so the X chromosome and X chromosome inactivation, and hormones. So I'm not passionate about these studies that want to compare the brains and say, the hippocampus of men is larger than women. That's why men can park better a car. That's really not the point, not at all. I don't think it's interesting. But the question is, what is different in the way we function? Our metabolism, our energy expenditure, and all that. What is different that makes female brains more vulnerable to some disorders and males to other disorders? There must be something that explains these differences. And I think we need more research into that. So a very long answer, but I hope it was useful.
Thank you so much. Was a very interesting dive into how not our brains are the same or different. Okay, so but then let's don't blame it on the brain. What do you think is the reason why we are not getting more girls in the first place, or women in general, into STEM? Do you think there are some reasons and causes, and where does it start?
I mean, so the simple question, but and it's probably also the obvious one. It's really the aspect of role model. I mean, again, we can only, as human being, we can only do what we can see. And if you, since you are a child, you can mirror yourself, you cannot reflect yourself on a career path, then of course you will not even start creating your path on academic level and then on a work level to make sure that you will reach, you will get that goal. So for sure, the first reply for me will be related to the fact of not having enough avenues for talent women, where not having enough diversity. So in a sense that we can have this type of role model. Then on top of that, it's really, again, for me, the rule of government, industry and academia on that. And there are policies that we can implement. I mean, I hope we will have the chance to discuss that, but even in terms of gender disaggregation of data, we can pass a legislation or creating standard related to transparency. So to make sure that we have proper data on gender, and with that we can also look at the policies that companies can create and establish it to make it sure to be enough attractive for women. So I will stop here for now.
Yes, I have a practical answer. Well, it's related to maternity issues also. I think that's a very critical period in a woman's life when she helps society, but I don't know if society helps her as much as she does. And I always talk to the team leaders about how they should accommodate their researchers' maternity leaves, and especially when they come back from maternity, because when you leave, you have this project of your child. When you come back, you have to go back to your scientific project. And if your team is not totally supportive, if they don't put you right back on track, if they don't, they show some, uncertainty about what you're doing, it can be very, very damaging, I think, because hormones probably at that time are not the same as usual. So you're very susceptible. So that I think that's a critical time, and that we should be very attentive to supporting women when they come back from maternity leave. And of course, for them to be able to come back, there also has to be all the childcare system there, and also the fact that the time that it takes to secure a permanent position is too long in general, and that is really hinders female careers, because, well, who is going to take care of kids? And during that time, even if there are two scientists living together, well, maybe the female scientist will be hindered, and then she will go to another job, another paid job, and she will disappear from science. So I think, well, there's education, younger kid education, of course, but there are the things that we can act on for female scientists who would like to embark on this career, is helping them, if they have a child, to cope with that.
Actually, I have some funny anecdote to this. Last year, as Women in AI, we organized with the TU a small summer school, and the idea was to have female experts in AI that are researchers speak to the coming generation, how career looks like. And all three of them who we asked to speak said, "Should we tell the truth, or should we make it sound better?" And I think it really reflected how hard it is to be in research and the matter. So I also really like this point of role models, and I would like to ask all three of you, did you actually have a role model that influenced your decision to get into the career you are in?
More than role model, I had role models and also mentors. And maybe I would like to spend two minutes about the mentors. I don't know about you. So I had along my career women, very strong women that were doing similar job as me, but a more senior level. And they were role models because I wanted to become like them, but they actually were spending time with me and sitting with me and encouraging me and all that. And I think this has been crucial in my career. And if I look back, what these mentors did with me were basically two things. One was the cheerleading part, right? Telling you can do it, just trusting yourself, you can do it. And I have an anecdote about that, which I personally really like, which is when I was thinking, when we created this NGO, and I was among the founders, and we were discussing who should become the president of this thing. And I was like, no way. I was a postdoc back then. And I'm like, no. I mean, this is too big for me. I'm not going to be the president of this organization. And this mentor, this friend told me, Maria Teresa, if somebody asked my husband today to be the president of the universe, he would do it. He would say yes. So why shouldn't you become the president of an NGO? It's okay. It's going to be fine. And, this thing of the president of the universe stuck with me. And I think about it every single time that some big chance comes my way, something that it's exciting, it would give me maybe, a chance to do great things and get visibility and change the world. But it's very challenging, it's, intimidating. And then I think of the president of the universe and I'm like, yes, and I raise my hand and I say, I'll do it. And we need to tell this to young students. And that's what I try to do with the girls that I talk to. The other thing that was done by mentors with me and for me was networking. So connecting you with people, telling you want to do this, you should talk to that person, and mentioning your name when you're not there, right? Making your name in rooms where decisions are taken. So these two things of the networking and the cheerleading, for me, and having role models, yes, knowing that women can become scientists, but then actually having the possibility to understand from a woman perspective what made them so successful in science. What is success in science for a woman? Because that's also a topic, maybe we have a different idea of what success is, and just to go for it. So that for me has been very crucial, and I'm curious to see if you have similar stories.
Yes, what is success as a woman? It reminds me when I was a undergraduate, we were discussing with some people, pals, whether we wanted to do research later on. And I remember some of my male friends saying, I can't imagine really that I would be able to get the Nobel Prize, so maybe no. So that's the type of thing that they had in mind, but you can just embark on a scientific career just for the fun of it, you don't have to aim for the being the very, very top, I think. So about role models, yes, it helped. That math teacher I had was a role model, but also, like you said, Teresa, getting help from mentors, being open about what you feel, so that you may see if other people feel the same. And I think, kind of finding people who are open to discussion, and that's the main thing.
I actually really agree with what you said, because I had similar experience with my mentor. She followed me for the last few years, and something that really made me do a switch that I was not considering before is the fact that we are really focused on content, right? I think all of us can spend 15 hours in a library and not get bored. Agreed, that's for sure. But then I think when it's about maybe some soft skills, or maybe the fact of creating our own network, or being able to speak up, or even the fact of thinking that we are enough for taking that type of ambition, we are really, really lacking. And I think I mean, I was actually in a period where I was moving to Canada for doing my LLM at McGill, and she was like, "You're going there for study, yes. You're gonna spend your entire day in the library, yes. But please start create your network. Please start having your key points, and please remember that you don't have to be 100% perfect at what you're saying just to express your opinion on something. So even like try to test an idea in the group you're working on. So really shifting a bit, which doesn't mean decrease the quality of what we are doing, but sometimes I think we put too many layers of perfection before speaking, and this is really something we should start working on. Then it's just my humble opinion.
Also, that research is a lot of competition, but it's a lot of collaboration, and you need really to be able to do both. I think to be comfortable with both, and it's not always that easy. But if there wasn't this collaboration, I mean, we couldn't we really didn't succeed, and nobody could succeed without collaboration. So we have to acknowledge that. Everybody has to acknowledge that it's competition and collaboration.
Yeah, very interesting aspect as well. That's also why we have our female networks that we established to push our careers and help each other, pushing us to our boundaries even. And so before I give it up to the floor, I want you to give a few last words. So we have this chance to address several countries at a time. And you mentioned policy several times. So what would be your final recommendation to the policymakers? What would be needed to get more women into STEM and research?
I'm going to start. I have two main messages. One is the funding of research. Again, going back to the idea that women come up with ideas, crazy ideas that maybe men or other people haven't thought about. For instance, if we had more funding into gender medicine, that would somehow naturally support more women. So try and fund funding schemes that support different types of research that might interest more women. That could be one way. And the other one that I'm very passionate about goes back to something that you mentioned when people told you that you should act more like a man. So right now, we tend to think that we would need, the policy change should be more getting the women to be closer to the men. Still, of course, we're talking about stereotypes, right? So the woman stereotype, closer to the men stereotype. So fixing the woman. And I think that's a mistake. And what I really think we should do is start thinking of policies that change the system and make it more interesting and more more welcoming to a different style of research and working. And it's necessarily only a woman's style, because I'm pretty sure a lot of men are also not very comfortable with this system. So creating different systems, different structures that allow for a different style of work. Why it has to be competition when it can be collaboration? Why can't we share leadership? Why it has to be always one person leading? I think we would all work better in shared decision making, for instance, shared professorship. This. So start reasoning and thinking about policies that don't necessarily change the woman, but change the system so that everything can benefit from it.
Well, there is so much that can be done. Honestly, no, I think something really important is that every sector has specificities. And for instance, I had the possibility to work on a space workforce for the Australian government last year, where we were really looking at the specificities of the space sector and how to actually create more prepared, also in terms of soft-skilled workforce. Mm-hmm. And this roadmap was also looking at the aspect of gender equality. So for sure, like looking at specific sector and creating specific policies and roadmap that can tackle workforce, including the bridge between academia and the work environment, is essential. Then, of course, there is, again, an aspect related to transparency. It's not only how you communicate, but how accurate you are on what you communicate. And I think there are standards and best practices that we can look at for ensuring that we have enough data and we know what type of policies are implemented by who. And I think I have a long list, but I will stop here.
If interested, you can send it out per email then. Yeah.
Yes. in France, there has been a reform of high school education that has depleted even more the number of girls who actually go for science. So I think something has to be done at the high school and even junior, I mean, middle school level to encourage girls in that respect. So role models, having more communication, and going to schools, going to talk to schools to show them that science is fun and exciting, and that's something that can also be dreamt of, like in the movie we saw. Yeah, giving them dreams that they can follow.
Thank you very much. So with this, I give it up to the audience, also to the audience in the Zoom call. There's the possibility to ask questions. However, we will not be able to answer all questions arising eventually. So let's see, hands up. Is there some burning questions you would like to ask to one of our panelists? This microphone is coming.
First of all, I would like to present myself. My name is Desislava Nadinova. I'm the ambassador of the Republic of Bulgaria here in Vienna. And I would like to thank the organizers, the Austrian Academy of Science, and all the colleagues, embassies, for organizing this discussion, and for you for raising all these important questions. I can only agree that more women in STEM are needed, not only for moral or social reasons or to fill gaps in jobs, but also because we need the innovative capacity of women. And as you probably are all aware, there are many studies showcasing that actually more women in engineering and technology would lead also to greater competitiveness and to more profits, actually in trillions increase of GDPs. What is the situation actually? What is the proportion of women in science and engineering? In Europe, the majority is dominated by males. And this influence, of course, the results. In Bulgaria, we're lucky. The women scientists and engineers are the majority. And there are a couple of countries in Europe that the case is such. Actually, female researchers Bulgaria, in terms of female researchers, ranks among the top 3 countries. And when it comes to new technologies, Bulgaria ranks first in terms of presence of female in information and communication technologies. And partially this could be explained by having long traditions of women studying and working in the field of technology and engineering, but of course it could not be taken for granted. And support is needed for women, not only for those already working in this sphere, and we are all aware of the challenges women face. And COVID exposed actually some of them severely, but also support is needed for those that are about to choose this path. And we have identified several aspects, and you have mentioned some of them. We need more mentorship and leadership programs. We need more information campaigns to raise awareness, to give also more visibility. And we need strong support for girls in science, and having workshops for building those skills that could help women assert themselves in this sphere. Thank you once again for raising all these questions. Really interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comments. Yes, please.
I'm Simona. I'm on the board of the Austrian Society for Immunology, and I represent the gender group. And I have a question about Austria in particular. So you guys have experience in Austria as a scientist, and do you think that currently the WWF and other funding entities can address gender issues enough so that you actually do have grants, even if you're a woman with children, and if you have gaps in your publication years, and do you think this is actually enough, what has been doing now for that?
So this is one of the things that I wanted to mention, the funding schemes, actually in general, having funding that somehow support women around their life cycle. I really can't comment exactly on what the Austrian system is doing, but I would be interested in hearing your opinions of what should be done, you know, because I think this is the nice place to propose some ideas. And basically in all countries I've been living in, some type of initiative has been proposed. It's a start. And then there's also a little bit of playing around and seeing what works, what doesn't work. For instance, this is going to be controversial. In Switzerland, there is a specific fellowship for women scientists, also a good one, which is supposed to launch your career. However, right now I'm aware of women not applying for this, because then you have the, you know, you got it only because you're a woman, not because you're a good one. So they're not applying for it. So, you know, you start with a very good idea and something that is supposed to help, but then when you try it on the field, it doesn't work. So I think we are in this phase of trial and error, and I would be very interested in hearing maybe what you think should be needed here in Austria, and if anybody has suggestions for funding. Yeah, it's not easy. It's not as easy as you think it would work in a certain way, and it does.
I can only share from the Women in AI perspective. We are involved in many funding projects, and we have many funding partners coming to us desperately looking for women in AI to collaborate in projects. So we get a lot of requests for active participation, but also for letter of intent supporting some research projects. And from a company perspective, since I'm a founder, there has been a lot of attempts trying to push. So one agency, for example, the Austrian Wirtschaft Service, they require, so if you have one female founder with at least a certain percentage of the share of the company, you would get, I think, some percent more of funding. And other projects have small initiatives, like you get 5,000 euros if you have a female founder on board, but they also need to have shares above a certain percentage. And I think this is a very good move to really also link it to the percentage that the person has. But that's what I'm aware of. But maybe we can discuss in a follow-up.
Is this working? Yeah, so Francesca Ferlaino from Innsbruck, quantum physicist. My question connects very well with the previous question, because, you know, that's an important week for women and for women in STEM, and we have the 8th of March. And just yesterday, the FWF have released the press release, let's say, communicating that one of the funding scheme, actually the only funding scheme dedicated to women, to senior postdoc, which is called the Anlässlich, have been cancelled. This opened, in my opinion, really a lot of discussion, in the sense, I mean, also connecting with what you are saying. Is this now a brave move? Is the right move to cancel? I mean, the FWF is our main funding agency in Austria. So it's really the funding agency where scientists go to ask for grant. And so it has a huge impact in the career model. And their approach, they had 2 women-based funding scheme, one for postdoc at the initial stage. These have been canceled, I think, 4 years ago or something like this. And now the second one for the senior postdoc canceled yesterday. And instead of having this, let's say, woman-dedicated grant, they made a different move, and they decided to, let's say, have a generic call, very different from postdoc call, I would say, which is open to everybody, but somehow then blocking some women quota. Now the question for me, which is a bit of a dilemma also, is it a quota within a generic funding scheme better or worse than gender dedicated grant? And certainly I would have wished a more broad discussion that the FWF would have opened a more broader discussion before making such an important move. I would say that was a big surprise. Yeah.
If I can quickly comment, I think, and it's going to be a really generic reply, but when it's about quotas and when it's about percentage, I think it's really impossible to generalize. I mean, we need to look at the specific cases at the specific sector, and then looking at the reasoning for canceling such a postdoc opportunity or not. But in general, I think we all agree that, and your example about Switzerland and the fact that then you do not apply because you don't want to be the one choose because of that. I mean, create an environment that has some blocking points, and especially then to be developing your career path. So I will again maybe mention the fact that for me, quotas like has to be look at doc, and there are so many steps that you can take before that. Again, it's a question of disaggregation of data, especially related to gender. It could also be the fact of having specific strategies, but I mean, every sector has its own specificities, and it's really difficult to generalize because, of course, there are blocking points in each decision and priority.
Okay, so I see we have one more question, but actually, I'm afraid that we need to close. So I would kindly ask you to ask the panelists in the break directly, and then we meet again. I would say in 10 minutes. So the break has been shortened now by me. And we meet at 11:20, and we will continue with our next panel. But before we go into the break, please, big applause, give it up to our panelists. Thank you so much. It is interesting. And then I really liked, I'm going to take it up, change the system, not a woman. So thanks.
Ah, ok. Ouais. J'avais fait ça, puis j'ai vu la salle, alors j'ai dit, ah, c'est bon. C'est on? Ça, on ne sait pas ce que c'est, ils n'ont pas repris. C'était comme ça tant qu'ils n'ont pas repris la session. Et là, j'ai rien vu. C'est ça. C'est un lettre très bizarre. Comment ça peut être? Ça. Avant que ça se mette en se passe une pause. Et ils font leur pause café, quoi. Ah, oui. Ils ont dit que ça reprendra 11h20. Ah! Mais... Non, mais c'est 11h20. Ils t'annoncent des choses. Ah, if you want to record, you do it here. Record on this computer. Here's where you do it. Ah, ça, c'est quoi? Voilà. Non, on l'a pas alors. Ja, diese, Participants. Participants. Ben, je sais pas. Good morning. Ben non, ça c'est les gens qui sont là. C'est les gens qui sont dans la... J'y suis moi. Ça des participants. C'est ceux qui écoutent. Ah oui. Ceux qui sont linked. Parler. Hein, les trucs qui font les chats. Bon, ouais. Et puis des photos. Ah oui. Ça veut dire peut-être alors. Bon.
I think so. I think that if they think of time, some few minutes, like it won't be anywhere in teacher line in the middle. It's going to be in the middle, very perfect. Right around, yeah. Okay, the power again, that light. Yeah, that's all. Yeah. Yes. I thought that came now. What this one, and I think that I thought, oh, but
and the order of, so we're just talking, we're just.
Ready? That.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are moving in direction of our second panel. Do we need female perspectives in the development of artificial intelligence? And I'm here with distinguished speakers who traveled far from other parts of Austria until other parts of UK and also from Canada. Did you come from Canada? From France, sorry, from France. And this is because but I think from the Canadian mission, right? Yeah, so this was a mistake. Sorry. And I'm very happy to introduce right next to me, Gülser Conrad. She's the founder of No Bias AI question mark, global initiative that she launched in 2022, and she will tell us more about that later on. And she also previously served as director of gender equality at UNESCO. Then you see Judy Weissman. She's professor of sociology at the London School of Economics, and she's also a fellow at Alan Turing Institute, where she leads the Women in Data Science and Artificial Intelligence Research Project. And on my outer side left, Eva Eggeling from Fraunhofer Center for Data-Driven Design with business units in Graz in Klagenfurt. And today, with these three experts, we are going to discuss how important it is to have women in artificial intelligence. Small applause or big applause, give it up to. Okay, so I would actually let you give a bit of an introduction on what you're currently working on. So, yours.
Yes. Thank you very much. I'm actually starting my fourth career, which is No Bias AI question mark, a think tank I founded about 2 years ago. It has two objectives. The first objective is to work on addressing bias, and specifically gender bias, in the current paradigm of AI, data-driven machine learning. And the second objective is to think forward and try to create a platform where different stakeholders, including researchers, tech company representatives, governments, but also people from both the North and the South can come together and discuss the next evolution in this technology, which has gripped us all and has created big changes in our lives. Prior to that, I was the director for gender equality at UNESCO for 16 years, based in Paris, France. And in that capacity, I led research in all of UNESCO domains, but I think the most relevant for our purposes is the research that I led from 2017 until 2020, resulting in two reports. The first report is called I'd Blush If I Could, and this report was about digital gender gap, gender equality paradox, which I can explain a little bit later on, as well as gender bias in voice assistants, specifically Siri, Alexa, Cortana, and Google Assistant. That research created a lot of interest, especially on the part of media, and it started a much needed conversation between researchers, international organizations, and the technology sector. So I'm very proud of that work. My second report is called Artificial Intelligence and Gender Equality, which basically provides a roadmap for the development of AI with a more informed, more explicit gender equality perspective. Prior to UNESCO, my second career was international development practice, which also involved a lot of technology. I worked on technology transfer in about 30 different countries, working mostly for the Canadian International Development Agency and the International Development Research Center. And before that, I was in the academia as a researcher and as a lecturer. After today, I think I'm going to start the fifth career because Maria Teresa really inspired me. I want to study neuroscience and get into gender medicine. So thank you.
Thanks. My name is Judy Wiseman. I'd like to say I thought the last panel was just fantastic, and lots of the points I would make were made there, and I hope to kind of pick up on them. You know, we've both had very long careers. I don't know where to start with mine, but I mean, perhaps I just want to say that I've been thinking about and writing about gender and technology literally for my whole career, which is now long. And I started, believe it or not, with the microelectronic revolution. And I just want you to reflect a moment on the fact that when that was new, there were lots of debates about how the microelectronic revolution would affect women, whether it would be the end of typing careers, whether women would be de-skilled, whether sitting in front of screens would affect pregnancies in women. We had lots of debates then about whether technological change was going to be liberating or reproduce inequality. You know, we then lived through you know, social media. We've had lots of rich feminist work, you know, analyzing these things for decades and decades, and schools of feminism, cyber feminism and cyborg feminism, and all sorts of feminisms, from second wave feminism and now third wave feminism. I think what stayed kind of constant in that time is really trying to say, look, we can't see technology as somehow outside of society, as somehow neutral. But what's clear right through all these revolutions is how much technology is embedded in social relations, in power relations, and that while we've got a society that is marked by gender divisions and gender power relations, that we're going to see this in the technologies. And I Blush If I Could is just a wonderful classic example of how absolutely, if we live in this kind of society full of these stereotypes, then we shouldn't be surprised that the technology we produce kind of reflects these things, and that we need to always be kind of demystifying technology. I mean, technology is wonderful and will offer wonderful things, but we always have to not think of technology as the solution to problems, as somehow this neutral, objective, wonderful thing that is going to solve social problems. And I guess just two other things, because I can go on forever. I mean, one of the things I do in my work and that we do in the group at Turing, which is very small, is always to make a connection, if you like, between the problem, you know, of the lack of diversity in terms of the designers and developers of technology. And I have to say, I'm on the AI 100 Standing Committee. I go to Stanford every year. I've done research in companies in Silicon Valley. I was kind of staggered when I first went in there because I had read it's full of young men, and actually they are full of young men. It's exactly who is in them. And these people actually are very powerful in terms of developing the technologies we've got at the moment. We've got a few very big companies that have a lot of power in terms of developing these technologies. We have to kind of remember that. And I'm always trying to make the link between the lack of diversity in terms of who's making these technologies and the world in which we live. And I would say, you know, and we've been talking about kind of neuroscience, We know everything from kind of the design of airbags to medical trials to kind of social media to, you know, I've written about Wikipedia and how underrepresented women scientists are on Wikipedia. You know, with every kind of technological development, we have to really uncover the social relations within them and whether gender is kind of, you know, embedded in them. And I think it's very much, last two things, it's absolutely, on the one hand, a social justice issue. It's an issue actually of why shouldn't, you know, women have these good jobs. You know, it's a matter of social justice. It's a matter of economic empowerment for women, but it's also a matter of how the world is constructed, you know, how the world is designed, how staircases are built, whether trams can have access to underground stations. All of these things are about how the world is built. My last thing, I don't want to take up too much time, is I wanted to say that I myself was an affirmative action chair. Can I just say very quickly? My first chair was at the Australian National University in Canberra, which is the elite academy in Australia. It was full of male professors, it always had been, and we had a Labor government, and some what we call Democrats at the time, some feminists in government, came to the men who ran the institute and said, I'm afraid you can't, we're not going to keep funding you if you keep running an all-male institute. This was in the 90s. And so they had a call for 3 chairs. I have to say that I as well had this business about, oh, should I go for a chair that's an affirmative action chair? I have to tell you that it was acknowledged to be the most meritocratic appointment they had ever made, right? They had always before made appointments within their network, within their circle. Actually, they got a big independent panel and they, you know, were sure that it was a meritocratic process. And I think when women apply for women-only things, that's what we have to stress. We're not applying for women-only things that are special. We're actually applying for systems of recruitment and promotion that are genuinely meritocratic. And so that's what those things are about. And we shouldn't feel somehow kind of intimidated and worried about those things.
Thank you.
So I'm really honored to be in the panel with these 2 eloquent ladies. My name is Eva Eggeling. I'm working for Fraunhofer. Fraunhofer, an applied research organization. So we are building a bridge between academic research and develop solutions for industry and society. And I'm a mathematician, and I started to study math because I couldn't decide what other science I would deep dive into. So I started with math, and I got stuck there because I think that math is the baseline for everything. It's a basis, and so is for artificial intelligence. So I'm the director of the Center for Data-Driven Design, and the name Data-Driven Design is also the red line for our projects. So we develop solutions based on data to fit best to industrial need or society needs. So solutions based on data. And of course, these solutions should be good, the best, optimized, whatever, but they also should be fair. So I think the math itself is very objective. So there's no influence in the math formula, but if you use the data, of course, there's where things can get wrong. I'm part of the Women and I family, and I think I wasn't a feminist as early as you. But the older I get, I think the more important I felt it is to have a good network, to have a good female network, because the colleagues have it anyway. So we should start and proceed to support each other as women in science and in all these fields. So that's why I'm very happy to be here and give my 2 cents of insight from the math view. What I wanted to add is I worked in 4 countries in my career. I'm originally from German. Maybe you don't hear it when I speak English, but in Austria, after one sentence, it's completely obvious that I'm from Germany. So I started there, then worked in Israel at the Weizmann Institute for several periods, then USA at Carnegie Mellon University, and then came back to Austria. And I think, it's a long time that I left Germany. I cannot talk about the conditions there in detail, but I really appreciate it in Israel and also at the Carnegie, is that it doesn't matter who you are. If you have a good idea, then you are in. So it's a brain that counts. So it did not matter that I was a woman in this team because they were really knowledge oriented. In Israel, you don't have to tell the kids, okay, you better learn at school, you need a good education, because they know it's essence. It's the essence. So everybody there was very inspiring for me. And in the United States, when Obama was president, not Trump, I think a lot of things changed there. At the university, it was the same. So if you have a good idea, you got research funding independent of position, ranking, whatever. So maybe these were, insulas of happiness for me. I think the higher you get in the hierarchy and in research institutions or everywhere, the thinner the air gets, and then it will be more difficult for women to be treated as equal as I had the chance to be treated in the past. So that should be it for the moment and get the questions.
Thank you so much. Actually, please, audience, raise your hand. Who has a technical background in here? So very briefly, I just to you, Eva, or also to the others, could you in one sentence, so there is no definition of AI that is accepted, but what is AI, what is bias, and what is the problem with bias in a very short explanation, explain to the audience what we're talking about actually.
Wow, short explanation. And no formula, right? I would describe AI as the method or technology or strategy to get machines to produce results that imitate human decisions. What is the sentence? Yeah, so I think this is what I want to say. So it's machine intelligence based on data. And as I said, you use data, there's a bias in it. So I think to get the best out of the AI chance is to be aware that data can be biased, and that you have to be aware that if you don't want to continue the mistakes from the past, historical bias, you have to do something on the data to get better results. So be aware of problems in the data.
Okay, thank you so much. So data is biased. Ergo, we have biased outcomes. And this would lead me to this very challenging question that I already raised before we met for this panel here. And I would like to actually ask you, Gülse, working on your initiative and being the founder of No Bias AI, is it possible to actually get rid of bias in AI and make the technology work for us all as we would inspire it to?
Okay, if you want a short answer, it's no. Now, let me open it up a little bit. Bias comes from different sources in the technology that we call AI. It comes from the data sets because we have to feed large amounts of data into those machines, which work through neural networks and algorithms, which are coded into the machines by people. And those people at the moment are largely 18 to 30, 35-year-old young men, 90%, over 90% young men, mostly from the economic north, with some from Asia right now, but all more or less educated in similar institutions, in similar contexts. They stay with each other, they socialize with each other, they learn with each other. And in the technology companies that Judy mentioned, the few that are leading the race, They operate in a culture, organizational culture, which is called a bro culture, a brother culture, where they really reinforce each other's value systems, each other's beliefs, each other's thinking, which includes their worldviews. And worldviews are, by definition, most of the time, contain prejudices, biases, and the like. So all of those things are built into the algorithms, are built into the systems that process the data that we feed in. The bias in data comes from the sources where we look for the data, mostly internet. So most of the data that is used in data-driven machine learning comes from the internet. Just to give you one example, while at UNESCO, we had a campaign about it. I'm sorry that Swedish ambassador left because she was the Sweden led that effort. We had a day every March 8th on International Women's Day. We had a collaboration with Wikipedia. Because in 2016 or 15, I don't remember exactly now, Wikipedia discovered that only 17%, 17% of their pages were about women. So, you know, you're dealing with a data set which has 17% information on women, and these are accomplished, educated, famous, well-known women. So imagine those who are not in that lucky group. We heard the scandal a few years ago. A Canadian scientist won the Nobel Prize for one of the scientific fields. He didn't have a Wikipedia page because they didn't think she was important enough. So then they had to, but then, you know, you have 18-year-old young men who are who have their own Wikipedia pages because they did something or other. So data sets are incredibly biased against women. And I'm not even talking about other social groupings that are not represented there. Data sets are largely about people who put in data into the internet through various mechanisms. So there we know it's mostly middle-aged men from the north, again, the economic north. So you are dealing with data sets that are incredibly questionable. Then you have the algorithms written by the young men from same circles. Then you have the black box, and nobody knows what happens in the black box, including the scientists who develop those black boxes. And then you get the result. So in the words of this very brilliant AI researcher at Stanford, I think, Fei Li, she says garbage in, garbage out. So now, can we remove bias? Unless we find a way to change the imbalance, gender inequality, and I'll speak about gender mostly here, in terms of internet access, in terms of internet skills, in terms of digital skills, you cannot really improve the data that comes from that source. If you don't change the technical teams that are working on AI development and products and services, you won't get diverse views in the development, in the testing, in the modeling. So again, you have a problem. And we can't change that. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but we won't be able to change the pipeline very quickly, very soon. According to another research we conducted at UNESCO, in 1985, in the United States, 35% of the students in computer science were women. In 2005, that percentage went down to 17%. You mentioned before the gender equality paradox in our report, so maybe here is the point to mention it. According to our research in terms of gender equality indicators in a country and the percentage of women in STEM and ICT studies, there's an inverse relationship. The more developed the gender equality indicators are in a country, you have fewer women going into STEM and ICT studies. In Belgium, it's 6%. Whereas the reverse is true for countries where gender equality indicators are really low. In the Gulf region, women in STEM and ICT at the university level, I'm not talking about the job market, it goes up to 50%. In Latin America, it's 48 to 50%. But when you get to the labor market, they disappear again. So unless you change all these things, it's very difficult to get rid of bias, because technology, after all, and AI comes from, we develop it, humans develop it. So we encode whatever value system we have, whatever bias we have into the systems we create and develop. There's the education side of it, and I'll tell you more about that later.
Thank you very much for this very deep insight. And actually, from what we've heard and picking up on that, and you said something really,
you just add to,
yeah, you can.
I mean, I completely agree, and couldn't have said it more eloquently. And I agree with every single point. I just want to perhaps just add to what's been said. I mean, I'm, slightly kind of worried about the concept of bias. I never know whether it's quite the right word, because I think it has kind of resonates with the notion of conscious or intentional bias. And I think what we're very much trying to talk about is how the structures of the collection of the data, the cleaning of the data, what data is collected, that all these things are actually about kind of institutions and kind of broader issues. And so I think there's a lot of focus on trying to give, I mean, I know this from kind of Stanford only too well. I don't know if this is being reported, more. One of the things they're doing at Stanford, for example, is that all of the computer science students have to do a course in ethics, right? And the notion is that somehow if they're taught a course in ethics, their kind of intentionality and their consciousness of these issues, that they'll go into these companies and do better things. Well, that's very much thinking about these things as philosophical, ethical, intentional issues rather than structural issues, which I think you've been so strongly talking about. I mean, the other thing I would say, and there's this fantastic book that came out a couple of years ago called Data Feminism by a couple of, wonderful American colleagues who very much focus on the missing data, right? That actually there's lots of missing data about women. And I mean, medical trials is a kind of classic, but all over the world missing data. And if I can just give you a tiny example. I mean, I spent my first year at Turing literally trying to get proper diversity data from major tech companies. I mean, I sort of started off saying, well, it's very easy to get figures on women in academia and students, all these things are publicly available, but really we need to know what's going on in corporations, really some proper kind of stuff. I mean, I can tell you that I have spoken to the most powerful people in Stanford, in these companies, at the Turing. You cannot get this data. You absolutely cannot get this data. The companies put out reports, they're incredibly partial. So even trying to do a social science of this stuff as a feminist, we just can't get the data to do that job properly. So one of the things we're pushing for at the moment, in terms of this new project on venture capital, but I'd say it more generally, is that the government actually, pushes companies to make these statistics available so that we can do a politics, so we can do an analysis of these things and then do a politics and policy around them, So I would just add that kind of missing data is the other bit, and the Wikipedia projects are very much focused on trying to even out that data.
Thank you very much. Actually, to follow up on what was said, microphone working? Yeah, okay, now. So to follow up on what was said, also picking it up from the first panel, Maria Teresa said, colleagues said, why are you doing this gender gap research? Nobody cares about that. We have bigger problems. And actually, this is also something that is very present in the AI sphere, where we have big voices like recently Jeffrey Hinton leaving Google because of this threat of the world basically being conquered by AI systems, and then being asked about Timid Gebru working on gender bias. And he said, I'm sorry, this is not existential problems that we are facing here. So I really liked what you said also about AI cannot, or technology cannot fix our problems. So I wondered if one of you wanted to elaborate on these statements in general. And
Well, stuff, you know, I was recently literally at a debate in Cambridge about this existential threat thing. I mean, it is such a kind of beat up. And the shares, of course, in OpenAI went through the roof. I mean, I'm now working on venture capital. I mean, the amount of money that is going in to, the chatbots and all this is completely phenomenal. And so, as a marketing exercise, this debate about existential threat has been incredibly successful. If you wanted to do a marketing thing and raise capital in this company, what better than to say humanity? I've heard Jeffrey Hinton, I'm just sort of speechless about it, actually, in terms of really addressing kind of real problems that we've got. Let's talk about climate change, existential threat of climate change. Anyway, sorry.
This is very much what I wanted to hear. Any other comment, or?
I think you made a perfect point. Yeah, it was kind of nonsense, but it has an effect, but not probably what was in the words, but what was afterwards. Yeah, I try to make a point here that we are very aligned, but let's spice it up a little bit, because yeah, otherwise it might get boring. You said before we have to change the data. I think you said it. And I think this is definitely, we should not change the data in the path. Maybe it raises awareness. If we use data from historical data with the algorithms made by men or women, whatever, but I think it's a very good thing that we see the current state. So it gives us a picture of the world that we have today. And the problem is not to learn from the past. So let's not change the data, but change the attitude towards what we do with the data. So at least one thing that we did not, that we don't agree on the same sentence. See if we can have some opposite opinions on something.
Can I make a follow-up question?
Sure.
So how would you not learn from the past, and or make the systems basically not repeat the mistakes from the past?
Yeah, if you cannot just continue in the same way. If you see in the data from the past, let's make this very obvious example that in the States, we had the statistics of positions, a higher position, that there were, of course, much more men, middle-aged white men in the positions. So you cannot use this data to say who's the best for the position, because we don't have female data. So use the historic data, but use different weightings. So if you change the weights, like this neural network learning works, if you want to change the situation in the past, you have to choose a different weight on females. So if you have candidates, give it a higher weight. If you speak in mathematical formulas, then all the others. Or it's not about women and men, also other minorities, people of color. So just if you are aware, if you have such a misproportions, then I think this is halfway win, because then you can change and you can understand the reasons why we don't have women in these positions.
By the way, there is a super interesting case last week from Google Gemini that generated pictures, and actually by overdoing it with diversity of historical moments, it generated pictures of soldiers 43 Germany being Asian women, dark-skinned men, and also having Vikings without any blonde Viking being part of them. So they had to take down the system and apologized for it. So it can be quite tricky then in the end to
We are not there
actually.
yet.
Sorry.
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, there are now, I can't remember what facts stand for, but, you know, there are these conferences now, fairness and accountability in algorithms. And there are loads. I mean, it's kind of you know, there are these big conferences now where, you know, machine learning scientists are collectively trying to find technical solutions for fair and accountable algorithms. And we don't for a moment want to kind of denigrate that work. I mean, I completely agree that trying to push technical solutions as far as you can is a fantastically good thing. And it's great that people with the expertise are kind of involved in that endeavor. I guess what we're saying is that we think in the end, a technical solution won't solve the problem entirely. It will go a long way to solving the problem, but actually it's a kind of structural societal. Can we agree there or not? Just try.
Can I add something? I read a book, Hello World. I think it's in my bag. There are a lot of nice examples about, it's not about AI, but it's about data and algorithms and if they are fair or what effects pop up. And there's a nice example, I think American courts and the judges there. They made an experiment to suggest, based on the data from the past, if about the
sentencing.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Missing the English. No, I think I lost my English right now. Yeah. And so, of course, it could be beneficial to have this data and some suggestions here. But of course, the judge made up his mind and he decides at the end. And it was funny that there's a big difference between the decisions before lunch and after lunch. Because you might be grumpy, you know, hungry, and or get very quickly through the process. So this is one thing. And at the end, they asked people if they would prefer to have a decision, maybe a biased decision from a human being because it's hungry, grumpy, or whatever, and if maybe different color than the person on the other side. Or from a machine-based algorithms that might also be a little bit biased. And all of them agreed better be judged wrong by a human person than by an algorithms. So I think if we are coming closer, use the best of the technology, but still at the human influence, then it can be a piece of happiness for everybody.
Well, I agree more because I've had debates with the lawyers on this. I say, why don't the judges stop drinking at lunchtime, which is the case in
I
solution.
mentioned this part.
No. I think seriously, absolutely, augmentation is the way we want to go, but we don't want to pose this polarization between having automated machines on the one hand and human decisions on the other. I mean, absolutely, the best thing would be to be a judge and have this knowledge about prior sentencing and all of this information, and then have a judge, you know, make a more informed decision. And so, I mean, I think most of the people now who are talking about the effects of AI in the workplace are very much kind of trying to push rather than kind of replacement, that actually there's, you know, the ways in which we can positively use AI to augment, if you like, human capacity.
Great.
Perfect. So thank you. Thank you for this elaboration and making it spicy as well. So I would like to go back to you, Gülser. So really this UNESCO report from, I make you blush if I could. I'd blush if I could, sorry, I'd blush if I could, has had a huge impact also in Austria. The first lady took on an initiative, it's called Initiative Digitalisierung Chancengleichheit. And so as you, as a godmother of this document, I would like to ask you, maybe could you explain what the title is about? Because I think it would show us placatively what it means, this bias in AI topic, and maybe also elaborate a bit further on what we can do to counteract status quo, what has been done already since then, because quite some years have passed. And yeah, the floor is yours.
Okay. So the title, I'd blush if I could, is a response given by Siri, Siri that Apple uses in its products. And this was the response Siri gave back in 2017-18 when it was told she's a, excuse the language, she's a slut. So when a man said to, talking to Siri, said, Siri, you're a slut, Siri's response was, oh, no, I would blush if I could. So that is the origin of the title. It has changed. Siri no longer says that, by the way. Apple changed that. But what we were looking at in that, this is the third piece in a three-part report. So the report started with our research on the reasons for the digital gender gap, which we found was widening instead of getting smaller. And from that, we went on to observe two phenomena. One was the gender equality paradox that I mentioned. The more developed a country is in terms of gender indicators, the fewer women they have in STEM and ICT, and the inverse is true for the other way around. And the third piece of the research was voice assistants and gender bias in voice assistants, which started with names. If you look at the names of the voice assistants, most of them are female names or names that evoke a female persona. Personas given to them were female. Life stories created around those voice assistants, especially the four big ones, Siri, Cortana, Alexa, and Google Assistant. They were all about women. In the report, we have a very long description of, I think it's Cortana, if I remember correctly. It's too bad I don't have a copy of the report with me. But it's about a woman who lives in Midwest United States. Parents are professionals. So there's a whole persona created around these voice assistants, which are really voices, sounds created by machines. So we were looking at the fact that 90+% of all of the voice assistants existed at that time, and our research was from 2017 until 2019, were females. So we inquired about the reasons for this. There is no, the companies were giving psychological reasons, sociological reasons, none of which turned out to be correct. We also looked at the impact of these voice assistants in our lives and how they were influencing us in terms of gender relations and gender dynamics. And that's where the scary part was, because we discovered that especially young children who are growing up with these voice assistants around them in the home. Alexa helps us a lot in our domestic life. In the cars, we have navigators with voices, women's, mostly female voices. In the office, telephones, especially in the economic north, we have a lot of voice assistants in our lives. And the discovery was that young boys, especially really young, like 5-6-year-old boys, they were growing up to believe that they have to talk to women in their lives, in their environments, with a very loud voice, because you have to be loud for Alexa to hear you. You have to give them very direct instructions, almost commands like do this, turn the light on, switch off this. So they were starting to talk to women in that tone and in that manner. And the girls on the other side were starting to believe that they have to be polite, non-confrontational, even when they are presented with comments that are not nice about the way they look, about the way they dress, about the way they speak. So I Would Blush If I Could became the code for girls to aspire to, you know, be pliant, be gentle, be nice, don't push people off, especially men off. And this was really creating a very bad influence and damaging a lot of the gender equality efforts that, you know, we have been involved in for the last 100 years, and turning young children into little macho boys and men, and the girls into little, you know, 1950s domestic goddesses. So that was the finding. Those were the findings. And then because UNESCO is an agency that works with national governments, our target audience was mostly the ministries of education to find a way to address that. But then technology companies got involved because we named the 4 big ones. The media that got hold of this report, especially the last part, they started calling the technology companies and asking them for comment, and they had no comment because it was true, all documented. But what they did was they started to change the voices, not change, add male voices. But male voices are, you have to consciously choose. So the default voice is still, in many voice assistants, is still female. And some companies also started experimenting with what they call genderless voices, which sounded neither female nor male. And some companies, which is the interesting development, use female voices for service-related functions, but male voices for instruction-related functions. So if you call a bank, and we did some experiments with that, but we didn't publish a report about it. If you call a bank to get information about loans, you get a female voice giving you information about loans. But if you want to apply for the loan, then you get a male voice that guides you and instructs you very firmly. The attitudes of the voices are very different. Female voices are always very gentle, very helpful, very soft. Male voices are always very authoritative, very strong-willed, and guide you through those. So, did I answer your question, or did I veer off?
Very good. Thank you. Thank you so much. Perfect timing. I just got reminded we are ready for the Q&A. So this is your chance to ask a question. Also, the ones following on Zoom, you can ask a question in the chat. And I see the first hand up here in the second row.
Hi, my name is Fiona Moison. I work at the UN Office for Disarmament Affairs. I was wondering, I was actually quite intrigued by the gender equality paradox. I didn't know about this. And I was wondering if there's any research done or anything that you can share on causality and on factors that would cause such a paradox. I would be interested in knowing more. Thank you.
Should I respond? Yeah, so this is my regret because we highlighted the paradox, gave examples from different countries, data, and when we produced our report, this was not the focus of our research, so we didn't go into the reasons, we didn't look for the underlying causes. And I hope that somebody would pick it up and continue the research on it. It hasn't happened yet. So unfortunately, we don't know why it happens that way. I mean, I can make educated guesses based on the socioeconomic context, the culture, the history of the specific countries, but it won't be, based on research.
So if somebody wants to start a PhD, that's a potential topic. Okay, thank you. Any more questions?
Hi, first of all, thank you so much for this panel. It's been so interesting. I have one question when it specifically now comes to AI image generation that we're now seeing everywhere, specifically also on social media. We now have entire channels where women actually AI created images are selling products to young girls, influencing them in how to live their lives and potentially choose their careers. Is this something that you have also already noticed that this IA image generation that gives a false image of what a woman is has impacted the scientific fields? Is it too early to say this, or is this something that you're starting to notice as well, the danger of that?
I don't answer as a scientist, but as a mother. I have two girls, 16 and 24, and okay, the 24 one is old enough. She knows about all the effects and is a scientist too. But we kept on talking about this so many times because the girls, especially the girls, but also the boys, they create their own reality, their bubble, and to make aware of the fact that nobody is perfect. If you get up in the morning, you're not as beautiful as in this Instagram post. It's just not possible. So talk about it to the girls, and I think. And if you think about it with Hausverstand, it's clear that it has an effect. Girls want to be pretty. They stop eating. They have a makeup routine in the morning, which is the fourth long as mine. So of course this has an effect and a negative effect. So, but talk to your kids. We didn't do research on it, but maybe the ladies have more on this.
Again, based on other research that we conducted when I was at UNESCO, we do know that images and pictures and social media have an incredible impact on different choices for both girls and boys. One of the things I wanted to mention was when we looked at the reasons why girls distance themselves from STEM areas and when this starts actually. We discovered that it starts during the transition from primary to secondary school as early as that. It more or less coincides with the onset of puberty. And this is when girls consciously distance themselves from STEM fields because of peer pressure, because of social media pressure, because they don't want to be seen, perceived as nerds. They want to be seen as popular, well-liked, well-integrated, socialized young people. And they think, unfortunately, that being interested in scientific fields would put them in a different category. There are other reasons for the same phenomenon, which is the distancing of girls from STEM areas. And it also includes parents who don't think STEM is an area for girls. Most importantly, for teachers who discriminate against girls in STEM-related studies subjects at that level. So we had several pilot projects where we worked with ministries of education and school administrators to develop pedagogical approaches to help them teach STEM in a different way. But it continues throughout the secondary level. So each year of secondary school, you get fewer girls deciding to go into STEM. Of course, in high school, which was shocking, only 16% of girl students get suggestions from their coaches or teachers to go into STEM or ICT compared to 33% of boys. And I think, I hope Maria Teresa will support me. I don't think there is a difference in the brains of girls and boys for STEM education. So it's not about that. It's about social context. It's about again, biases, prejudices, cultural differences, and the like. But I don't have my slides with me, but we had slides in terms of depictions of schoolgirls in Google and in DALL-E, which is one of the image one of ChatGPT. Incredible pictures. You see girls mostly in mini school uniforms, really mini school uniforms. And in the new version, in the generative AI versions, it's mostly Asian features because I don't know, maybe the bro culture thinks that Asian women are more pliant, more because there is that prejudice bias. So I'm really worried about how they are getting affected, even though there's no research. I think we can safely assume that it's happening.
Can I add to that? I mean, you know, can I just say, as somebody who's been involved in this field as well for a very long time, you know, we did in the 1980s do a lot of work on stereotypes. We did education programs, we did, you know, graphic design. You know, like we have spent a lot of time collectively trying to do something about these images, and not very successfully. It seems to me that these problems are very deep problems in terms of the culture. I think, just to give you sort of one example, I think the notion of what a genius is, of what is brilliance. You know, there's been lots of studies on this, right? You know, why is it that we have this sense, particularly in kind of Western cultures, actually, that you have to be brilliant somehow, born to do maths? Anybody could be a sociologist or a, you know, communications person. I mean, you know, there are a whole lot of culturally shared values, even in terms of what technology is, which are historically very specific and recent. You know, I always say to my students in London, you know, if you go to the, you know, if you go to where the Science Museum is in London, and probably a lot of you have, there's a Science Museum on one side of the road, and there's the Victoria and Albert, which is arts and crafts, on the other, right? It's historically specific division. It happened at a particular time, and somehow arts and crafts are seen as, you know, more women go to that gallery. I've talked to the director of the Science Museum. The women who go to the Science Museum on the whole, he says, mothers who take their kids there, right? But even in terms of our cultural representations of what technology is, you know, why is it that more women go into kind of health and biotechnologies rather than other technologies? Why don't we see a lot of the things that women have traditionally done as being very sort of skilled, as being forms of science? I think these things are very sort of deeply embedded, and the result of it, in Western countries, it's somehow femininity and skills in technology. I mean, it's with car mechanics, right? It's the same old stuff being kind of reproduced. And what's refreshing about your report is one does go to other countries like, you know, China and some Southeast Asian countries where girls learn maths because you to be brilliant to do it. Everyone does it. There's just a completely different culture about what these, you know, skills are. So I think we've really got to kind of disembed kind of notions of actually, you know, what technology is, what skills you need, and you know, get rid of some of the aura that, you know, you don't have to be that brilliant to have a career in technology. You know, we kind of do that, and I think it would shift things phenomenally, actually. And lastly, and just to pick up on what Gloria said previously, I mean, I've specifically I'm not doing work at Turing on, you know, education and pipeline in these things, because it seems to me we've done a huge amount of work on that and much less work on what I think of as workplace culture. You know, what happens to the women, increasing number of women who go into these workplaces, and what we find is differences in promotion, differences in retention, sexual harassment, no maternity leave. You know, women have to shake up, you know, the workplaces, it seems to me. And that would make a huge difference kind of going backwards rather than always starting with the kind of the pipeline thing and then having these blockages further on.
Thank you. This is the perfect handover for our next panel where we're going to talk about both ways of the pipeline. So we are a bit too late, but I think you can all forgive me because we had really distinguished experts here talking about super important topics. And I would like to ask you to stay seated, but to give a huge applause in this case for our experts. Thank you very much. And we do a very quick shift or step. And I asked, first of all, Verena Eichholzer. She is an experienced manager and expert for changing organizations, leadership, and people development. And she's currently the general manager of Mentality Stiftung. Please. Doris Hofmeister, Partner von einem schwedischen Unternehmen Mercury Urval. Vielleicht kommen wir das später noch. Maybe we can correct it later on. And she is partner of the international business of the Swedish company working on acquisition for CEO and executive level. And last but not least, Angelique Sanchez, Gender Officer at the Innsbruck Institute of Quantum Optic and Quantum Information. So we have been discussing a lot about the existing gender gap in research and STEM, about how bias has negative outcomes when it comes to AI affecting our societies. And now we are going to talk about what can we do about this? How can we actually get more women into these fields and have them actively contributing to the world we want to live in? And so I would like to start with the first. So I think we ended the last panel very interestingly with this idea of a pipeline. We always look from education on the one side, but maybe also looking from the pipeline of the other side. And before I do this, I would actually like to ask my panelists to briefly introduce themselves and talk about current projects and focuses. So please.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. I tried to make it short, but I'm still thinking about my introduction because you did your introduction in a very special way, because it's not always so easy to say who am I or what am I doing, because from my academic background, yeah, I would say I'm an economist and a philosopher, but I wouldn't call myself philosopher, economist. I would call myself a lifelong learner because I'm very curious and I always try to get as much as insight as possible into other disciplines and topics. So yeah, I have a very diverse background. That's what I want to say. And I think this should not always be the most important thing to go on further, yeah, because we change our directions and this is good in our careers. But today I'm representing the Mentality Foundation. In English, we would be called STEM-mality Foundation, yeah, because Mint and STEM. So I have to apologize in advance if I mix it up sometimes, because I'm used to say Mint, but this is always meant STEM. So yeah, the STEM-mality Foundation. We are an Austrian foundation, and our focus is on the promotion of girls and young women in STEM education and professions. The Mentality Foundation was founded 2 years ago, so we are quite young. Not only the girls are young, we are also quite young, not from our age, but the organization. And the Mentality Foundation was founded by Therese Niss, together with 9 big Austrian companies and 2 interest groups, the Federation of Austrian Industries and the Austrian Economic Chamber. And our founding partner number 12 is also an Austrian foundation, the Innovation Foundation for Education. So yeah, we are a very company-oriented foundation. And what do we do? As I always said, yeah, we develop and promote and link projects throughout Austria with a focus on girls, also boys, yeah, of course. But the focus is on the girls in STEM, yeah, to inspire them. And so our aim is to win the girls and not to lose them again over the course of time, yeah, because this is always the problem, like we have already discussed. I always say it in the words, we are committed to keeping the girls' STEM fire burning, yeah, every week, actually. Yeah, I think it's all for the moment. I will go on later. Thank you. Yeah, good afternoon also from my side. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's my pleasure to be here representing Mäkry Urval, the Swedish company, and unfortunately Annika, the Swedish ambassador, left. Due to her, I got the invitation. I think it's a great opportunity. Mäkry Urval is specialized in executive search and leader advisory, and we are acting in more than 50 countries worldwide. I have been working for the company already for 18 years because I really enjoy the Scandinavian roots. And of course, we are very diverse, not only in terms of sex, but also in terms of thinking and so on. I'm acting as a consultant and partner in the company, and one of my core business is really executive search, meaning recruiting people, qualified people in science for different organizations. It can be public organizations, private university or research organizations. And I'm focusing on C-level positions and board level. So of course I have a very narrow perspective on the topic, but I'm glad to share some insights about our learnings and also about our challenges to bring the right people on board. Having said that, we got an example from Eva before about the judge, that it depends about the outcome, how does a judge feel? And that's why it's even more important in executive search to have an objective approach. So we are working a lot with a scientific executive search approach, which is also ISO certified and globally comparable, really trying to bring selection on another level, keeping it short to bring it on an objective level and avoiding things like that. More of that perhaps later on. Thank you so much. And I hand over to you, Angelique.
Hello, I'm Angelique. Thank you for having me. And I'm going to start with, I think like most of you, I'm a feminist. That's still a scary word for many people today, and I think that's a big issue. I'm going to tell you a few steps which led me into being the feminist who I am today. I think first one was with actually my brother, explaining him that my Barbie doll didn't need him to save her, you know, she could save herself. And then very young, still like 11, one friend told me she actually had been abused by someone who should be her main caregiver. Then further on, I was told by my math teacher that I would never succeed in math because I'm a woman, you know. So those are just a few steps that led me to actually, after graduating in business, to start a bachelor in psychology alongside working to understand what was happening there, because obviously something was happening. And with all that, last autumn, I started to work as a gender officer for the Institute for Quantum Physics and Quantum Information in Innsbruck, thanks to actually the professor Francesca Ferleno, which you saw this morning, because she actually advocates a lot for this position to be open. And so my job here is, on one part, with her to create a platform for women in quantum physics. And we have 4 values for that. One is to, and 4 goals actually. One is to inform about what's happening, because apparently we still have to tell people that there are not enough women in physics. Then the second part would be to support women, to tell them what grants you can have and what prices you can get and stuff like that. Another one we talked a lot about today is to empower women, to tell them about role models and also to share amazing women, because I guess many of you know about the Matilda effect, which is the fact that we just erase women from science. But we will talk about that maybe later. And the first one, we also talked a lot about it today, is about connecting women in physics and in science at an international level. But I think that's something actually men do really well. And I think it's really important for women to support each other. And yeah, I will end with that. I think my work is to light up the women around me. And I think it's really important, and not only women, but also every minorities.
Thank you very much for your introduction. I really liked what you said, that you're trying to win girls and not lose them. And this is actually a statement that I would like to work on now, because also for a later stage, having female employees or having graduates from university and then having them divert in other directions, as we heard, graduates don't stay in the field and move on. And how also to attract women to these positions. So maybe starting from this pipeline downside really early, looking at girls, maybe can you elaborate a bit what is the main obstacle you see, and how do you actually what do girls see when you try to push them into this direction? Do you have to do some work to even create role models in this regard? And what are the measures you are carrying out to inspire, make them catch fire into science and STEM?
Yeah. Many questions, many answers. Yeah, I think one point is that we know from research and our own scientific studies that the earlier and the more frequent the support, the better and the more sustainable the impact. Sure, yeah, we know this, but it's easier said than done, of course. But for us, it is very important to do projects to bridge the gap between education and professions, especially between schools and companies. So start really in kindergarten. Yeah, this is first side we think, what shall we do with children in kindergarten? There's such a long way until they get into a company, and they need people now. Yeah, but we have to invest in this. And that's why the role models are very important, as you already said. And we also mentioned this in former discussions. When we're talking about role models, I think the role model, the female role model, should not always be the female CEO in the tech company, but the girl next door, the neighbor, a young girl that is very happy and successful as a technician, for example. Yeah, so because I think we start sometimes too high. Yeah, we have this. Oh wow, these careers, and the sitting the girls and say, oh wow, how shall I reach this? Yeah, it's too big. So in our mentoring or role model relationships, we try really to catch the younger girls for the even younger girls, and not only the experienced women in the positions. So.
And what do you do exactly?
Yeah, as I already said, we are still a startup. So we just started our projects. But for example, we have a project that's called Unternehmensschuljahr. It's a bit difficult to translate it into English. But it's a long-term relationship or cooperation between a school, a STEM school, and a company, a big company. And so the school visits the company visits the school. They're working on a project on really on questions of the company that are real questions, not only we did this for the children, real questions, so that the people say that the young children can see that it can make an impact, and to work together for 1 year. And of course, they get to know the role models, female roles in the companies, and they see how their learning path and their career path can look like. Yeah? And this, I think, what is so important is that, because we were talking about are they nerds? No, they aren't nerds. Yeah, because this can be a young girl or young woman very interested in chemistry, but also doing ballet, for example. Yeah, this is not an either or. This is an as well as. Yeah, and this is so important that they see that women or girls are not a homogeneous group, but they are so diverse, and there are so many possibilities. Yeah.
This is a really interesting aspect as well, at least for myself. I often find myself with some conflicts that aren't real conflicts, they are only in my head. But if I would just leave them, we would make for example, shifting from a rights lawyer to an entrepreneur, completely contrary to me. But now it doesn't, because you have such an impact as an entrepreneur as well. Okay, so yes, thank you. So I think also what we had from the other panel, maybe not looking only having these role models who are geniuses, Nobel Prizes, and so on, but now looking really at the highest paid jobs where we are trying to get the best talent, which obviously includes women as well. What is your experience, Doris? And how do you interact, and how many women do you usually attract, and how does it work?
Okay. So first of all, I would like to explain how executive search works. So the client comes to you and gives you a very limited demand, which we really discuss in detail, so that we say, okay, what is your strategy? What capabilities do you need? And what capabilities do you need from a formal point of view, but also from a personal point of view? And I have to point out that we never prefer a woman because it's a woman, but we are looking into capabilities, and we need to have the right set of capabilities in terms of formal and personal skills. The reality looks as follows, that this is, of course, not allowed, that they say, I want a woman or I want a man. It's not written in an executive search profile, but I can tell you one experience which really was shocking me personally. This is C-level position herself, being pregnant, coming to the executive search profiling with the trolley with her kid. So I was also putting the kid on my arm, discussing with me the search profile and saying to me, but I don't want a woman because I'm pregnant. So that's reality. But I really see my role as a consultant, and I have been really successful in consulting the client. When they want a woman, they sometimes get a man. When they want a man, I'm just leading a process right now, they get a woman because it's the right capabilities, just to point out that. Then we are living in a world where, companies, organizations, also in science, of course, even more, we are demanded to present women because they have it in their targets. When we talk about clients who are giving us the assignments, these are actually top-level managers, mostly men. And so we have to also consider who is selecting from a company's organization's point of view the people. So they are raising us, okay, this is what we are looking for very specifically. And then we are going into the process, okay, we have to present women because they might have it in the bonus scheme. Have a certain percentage of women in their management team, they get a bonus. Yeah. So then, of course, we are working with direct search. Direct search means we really call into organizations. So perhaps we would call the three of you from the panel before, because we think, wow, fantastic women, we need them on board. What we experience when we're having an executive search, and of course, very often it is publicly published, men really are calling our researchers and they say, you have not considered me so far. I'm the best profile. Let's have me in. And our research say, okay. And when they are calling in women, unfortunately, and I'm now mainly talking about Austrian society, we experience here a lot that women say, you really mean me? Why me? And so on. And that discussions where we always say, okay, that's the rumors what are around. I can really confirm them. And this is something where I really have to point out that we are lacking proactivity here. We are lacking self-confidence, and we are lacking presentation skills. Because when we get women into a process on this top level, of course, I'm a woman myself, and I really might have a closeness to women just as it is. Yeah, it's always a little bit of natural, I think, attitude in that and mindset. But what I can tell you from high-level executive search processes, it's a pity that I can really generalize women don't present themselves as good as men. And this is something where I really would like to also look a lot into our school system. But this might be another topic later on, not to talk too long for that.
Yeah, but very interesting. So we're gonna get back to that. Yeah, definitely. Being in this, speaking about this topic, looking at companies, I have many, as being president of Women in AI, at events, companies address me and say, we would hire women if we had some that would apply, that we could choose if they were there, the experts, but they aren't. And actually, we discussed before going on the panel that women attract other women. And so I just wanted to ask you, how do you perceive this argument of companies saying we would hire, but we can't find them, and what companies can actually do to really build an environment for inclusivity and diversity? Mm-hmm.
Sure. First, I think that's not an argument. I'm sorry, but I mean, we are half of the population of the world, so there are some women somewhere. I think they just don't look in the places maybe, and as we said, it starts very early as a company. Of course, if you're a startup, you won't be able to invest as if you're a big group, but at your own scale, you can always do something. So if you start with girls in during their studies first, just please tell them they are good enough, because of the Pygmalion effect. Means if you tell them they are bad, they are going to be bad. If you tell them they are good, they are going to be good. So start with that, and then to recruit them. So there is a very amazing book about a study getting to diversity, what works and what doesn't. And they actually did a study on companies for 30 years, and they found out that people and in general minorities, but women, you have to have good referral and good mentoring programs. But we always talk about them. They have to be very formal, because if you're not doing it in a formal way, you would just, I'm a white woman. I would go to a white young girl to help her out. And then you will only have white women, and that's not what we want, right? So I have to ask people, what kind of skills do you need? And then you find the person who has the skills and you link them together. That's how they're going to stay. And also it works the other way around. You're going to have a white, old man who's going to mentor, I don't know, a young black woman, and he's going to actually understand what she is going through and he had never had to go through. So I think that are the first steps. And then also, of course, the environment, because we all say, yeah, we know that harassment and stuff exists. It's actually 1/2 women who has been harassed during her career in science. So we always say, it's not happening here, not in my institute, of course not. But that's not true. It happens everywhere. We have to be aware, we have to be allies, we have to listen to the others and provide an environment that doesn't shame people, but that says, hey, we're going to work together on that because we don't want it to happen again.
Thank you very much. So this seems already like one initiative, something that can be done, this visibility also of things that are not acceptable, of things that happened for a certain extent, maybe having channels were to complain anonymously, which, by the way, is part of the whistleblowing directive that was passed. But I think Austria did not include gender topics in the text, if I'm not mistaken. Please don't take me on this. And now really coming to the topic of the panel. So what can we do to really get women to study quantum physics, to aspire to become a CEO eventually, even though maybe this might be scaring young girls off? How can we also solve this dilemma of pushing women to get to their top, but at the same time not scaring somehow girls off from something they think they can't reach? And yeah, so what do you think are the most effective measures that should be taken in getting more girls and the women into STEM?
Yeah, what I think is very important is, I think Sarah said this, that we should not, we don't have to change the women, but we have to change the system. And I would add this, we have to change our mindset, yeah, because this is where it starts, yeah. Because we all, and also I do have this, yeah, we all have these stereotypes in our heads because of our socialization, and this is reproduced again and again and again, yeah. And this is not something bad. I mean, we have to be aware of it, but it's not something bad in a narrow sense, because we need this, because it reduces complexity, yeah. Because when we talk to each other, of course, I see if you are a woman or not, but we have to be aware of this and what we do with these stereotypes. Yeah, this is so important. And I didn't say this, but our primary target group, the girls, yeah, girls, young women aged between 3 and 19. And our secondary target group, of course, are the influencers of these girls, and the influencers are especially the parents and the teachers. Yeah, so this is very important, not only because when we talk about encouragement and support and so on, this sounds something like a deficit, but it's not a deficit. Yeah, it's this, yeah, this encouragement in another sense, and this is so important to involve the parents and the teachers. We, for example, have established a so-called mentality club, or the mentality club, where we involve representatives of our target groups, meaning the girls, the educators, and the parents, in the development of our programs. Yeah, because we are sitting in our mentality foundation and think, yeah, but what do the girls really say, and what do they need? This is important. And also the teachers, yeah, because they are the role models also for the girls, yeah, because they are standing in the classroom, and how do they see themselves? Do I see myself as a teacher, or do I see myself as a chemistry expert for chemistry, for example? Yeah, and this makes a difference. And so this is so important also for the parents. The parents also have to be very, they also have to have courage, because when your daughter decides to go on a technical school, this will not be easy for the parents. Yeah, of course, it's easier when she does something with languages, for example. Yeah, so you need all of them. So this is, for me, the most important thing, that we all have to change and always think about what do we have in our heads, and change our mindset about the stereotypes. And this is also why we are not doing these programs in a narrow sense, but we are also doing a lot of communication activities that try to break down these stereotypes.
Actually, Doris, I want to pick up some other thought from another discussion we had today. So we had this, you know, the system should change, not we women. And this was also in this direction that we shouldn't have to behave like men to be successful. And so this was very interesting what you said before. So do you think that could be the system, like rather having, I mean, women having to improve the presentation skills, okay, but maybe there is also some part of the system that is flawed? Would you see that? And yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. I think you have to look at it from diverse perspective, because we had before also an insight into different mentalities, different cultures. And so when I look into Austria, only few women are into science. When I look into Eastern Europe, it's completely different. Still, when coming then to the top search, we had, okay, then there is the dropout rate. But why is the dropout rate? Because we have what you said, I'm sorry for that, but the same target group, I try to be polite, often Western men, in the middle ages, yeah, and then the selection is starting from there. I do believe when we look from a long-term angle, especially in Austria, I'm very critical about society, and that we are really in a very traditional system, and so politics comes into place. And I don't want to lead a political discussion today, but we are definitely in Austria very traditional and in a male-oriented society. That's a fact. And I was not believing it myself when I was naive in my mid-30s. I thought there is not this gläserne Decke, that there is something above which can stop you. Then being in executive search and really looking into reality and having the bodies, and they are in the cold Burschenschaften, and they are in the networks and how they support each other. This is true reality, and this is really frightening. And then you see the women networks, and I have to tell that women have a different kind of support, and sometimes you also see envy there, which is different with men, and that's also a fact. What I strongly believe, and if I might be critical also to today's event, I would appreciate to have also 2 other men here sitting, because I do believe that also if I look into the audience, we are a majority of women. If we want to change the system, we only can do it together. We should have here different kinds of mentalities as we have. We should have different kinds of sex, different kinds of whatever, and then we can talk about how can we get more people into STEM. Having reality in Austria, I do believe that we should be creative, because this is one the wish, the other what we can do. At the moment, the government is doing a lot in terms of financial literacy, because you also see not only in science, but also in terms of financial knowledge, women are less educated than men. What just came into my mind, perhaps we could have something like science literacy, that you say, okay, let's have another way of communication, advertisement, another way of really bringing it in society, and be a little bit provocative and think out of the box. So like using your Stiftung, your foundation, I think it's a super initiative. So I'm very happy that we have it in Austria, but definitely also Austria has to catch up, because otherwise we will not be competitive in the European or in the global world.
And I just wanted to add thanks, Doris, for bringing this up, because this is also when I saw the audience and when I saw the panel, because it's women in the title, yeah, women in science, it's not a women's topic, it's a societal topic. That's really, really important. Thanks.
Yes, that's a very good point. And actually, everyone needs to understand that it's an everyone's issue, because I also want men to be able to take parental leaves. That's very important. For example, I was talking to a guy at my institute, and I was asking him, oh, you just had a baby. How was the parental leave? And he was like, I'm the main caregiver. I couldn't take it because, being paid only 80% of your salary, my family wouldn't be able to live on that. So they're gonna actually, men are gonna win for that with gender equality too, and that's very important. And as your question is, how can we do that, and how can we get everyone on board? That's quite difficult. I would say my job at the Institute, for example, they all have job which is physics, and how do you get them to actually come to your event of talking about gender stuff? So first you fail. I did a workshop, and except my colleague who is always there for me, because women support each other, there were nobody. So it's really, really hard. And then you learn, and you're like, okay, maybe we need to talk that in a more funny way, like outside of work. So we did a movie night with popcorn and everything. That went very well. But the movie was Picture Scientist. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's actually quite hard. It's about women in the US who have been harassed during their career. And we had very good feedbacks, and people really talked about it afterwards. So that worked really well. It raises discussions, and then I think that's a start.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm hesitating whether I should say something to, but I mean, as president of a women's network, we also have members, by the way, that are only women, and usually we have open events. We would also take men, but nobody dared so far to join. But that's a discussion we're having internally a lot also, because we want to send a specific message, but then you're scaring off another group, and sometimes you're also creating a safe space for some ideas, because to a certain extent dynamics change, and you might have a different feeling of expressing certain things. So there is advantages and disadvantages, but thank you for the comment. We will take it in for the next time.
If I can add something, I think we actually need both spaces where we have only minorities and other ones. And I mean, they complain they are not invited, but I mean, we have been not invited for such a long time. I don't mean we should like do the opposite, but yeah, it's important to notice.
I mean, you can also go on, and there is also gender, not only sex. So we have different genders, which we didn't discuss and so on. But at some point, we need to say, okay, we have of the population, we have topics that address us, and sometimes we want to address them in our space, and sometimes we want to have the ones who need to help us, where we want to go, because we can't do it alone. And but I think fighting for women's rights means also fighting for rights of smaller groups that are even less seen, because we push for diversity, taking these groups with us. At least that's my point of view. Okay, sorry. So another question I have that is burning, and I touched upon it a bit. So this think we would have now this ideal world with having all these female CEOs. So we heard that you had this worst case example where person in the situation doesn't want to have the same person. We have this envy thing that is often mentioned and experienced. And then we also have this leaders who push for the positions that we need that to empower us. So what do you think? Like, how can would just the fact that we have more women in leadership completely change the situation, or would it not be enough? And how would we? What would you suggest actually?
I think the solution for that is sorority, because of course only putting women there doesn't work, because not all women are feminists. And I would say also because we have been raised that way. When you see the picture of woman, the only woman in the room, I guess you all have seen those pictures. Women at the time and still today sometimes are taken like a token, and there's only one space, and you can't put two women there. Of course, it's getting better, but I think we really need to understand we can be all, and I mean, as we said, all minorities, and there's not only one space, and we need to raise the women around us. Because, for example, I heard so many times talking about women with high position, oh, she's bossy. Then when you talk about her colleague, he's a boss, he's a leader, and words actually matters, I think.
Yeah, I would say that the most challenging thing is to reach this critical mass, because yeah, sometimes there's only one woman in school or at work, but there is this number that when you have 30% of women, and I think this also would be true for men, when you have 30% of women, then other women feel comfortable, yeah, in a room or in a department or wherever. And I think that's the most important thing to reach this critical mass, and that's what I meant with we want to win them and not lose them, because we have the dropout rates. Yeah, we will have them at school, we will have them at university, at work, because what working conditions do we find there? Yeah, do we feel comfortable there when it's a technical company? And I get to know them now since I'm working at Mentality, and it's not I don't feel good there, and I like to be in men's world, yeah, but yeah, it's and I always think, how is this for a girl aged 15? Yeah, uncomfortable for me to be for example, in a canteen, and there are only men. Yeah, it was a totally new situation for me as well.
So perhaps discussing that also, what attitude do we need and what mindset? I mean, one is having females behaving perhaps differently and males behaving differently. It's about the attitude. What do I need as a leader to create the environment that diverse people feel well? And we know that we need diverse teams, said not only regarding sex, to be successful as a company. And we are living more and more in a competitive world. So I would really like to emphasize that it's also about the mindset. So what you said, and also encourage every one of us when we are going out today, also looking at our own language. So like, I think you mentioned the power of language. So the wording, what wording are we using? So if I observe myself, and I'm so middle-aged, I'm having a quite male wording. That's very interesting to observe in entrepreneurial environment. And I had, before I came here today, a leadership assessment. And the candidate said to me he has a wording he really likes, and this is study, work hard, and advertise. And I would love to encourage everyone, especially women in science, as this is the topic today, and women, to advertise themselves and to present them on the screen so that they are seen if they are popping up opportunities, and also then catching the opportunities. So as we were asked to take part in a panel, often women refuse to take part. The visibility is really key there. And this is something where I think every one of us can really contribute to change that.
Very nice word. And actually, this brings us directly to our Q&A session. So please raise your hands. And I see 2 hands in the back.
Thank you very much. Nicole Amberg from Medical University, also founder of something called STEM Fatal initiative. Thank you. And I'm twisting my head around these questions all the time. And I think good news is there is something very simple, very easy, very cheap that we all can do every day. It also has to do with stereotypes. So when we talk to young kids, maybe 2 years old, what do we typically say, maybe even I, to a girl, so pretty, your hair is so cute, oh, look at you. What do we say to a boy? Oh, how fast you can run and how high you can jump. Maybe just turn it around. And it sounds absurd, right? To say to a little boy, how cute you look, your hairstyle, oh my God. But this is actually what we do to the girls. So let's take this whole loop, and this costs us nothing, just a little thought before we intuitively speak to how we were socialized. And something that maybe costs 30 euros. It's a little robot that I now make as a gift as Aunt Nicole to all of the young girls in my friend circle. Maybe that's why they don't invite me anymore, but half of Vienna is maybe swamped with these little robots. And the girls love it because now they can just try it and they can do little very simple programming. But I think for them, it's the first encounter. Oh, I did something like, technical. And then they bring it to the school and they show it to their girlfriends. And then everybody is somewhat in touch with this. And I think also later, what women have never really learned is how to network in a sustainable manner. Because I think we women in our networks, we always it's like we go back in history and we start all over again because we have never really learned to make this true investment so that the next generation can just start where we have ended. They also always have to go back. And I think this is what men's networks are really doing in a great way, if we like it or not. And I mean, it's also something I'm trying to do with my own students. I'm really trying to push them forward. And I say, look, here's an amazing opportunity. You should really go for this. Even if we were both, let's say, suitable for the job, I always tell them, you go for it. I have my position here, but this sounds awesome. I get in touch with a few people and personal connections always also make the world go round. And I think this is where we just don't need to be like the only woman in the room, as you said. I think it's good if there is a second and a third and So we're looking some men here today. I think it's amazing that we have like 100 women in this room, and I finish now. Thank you.
Yeah, just a short comment on what you were saying, Nicole, because you were talking about a little bit about this doing gender effect. Yeah, and what we tried in our team to fix is that every week we brought examples when we did doing gender ourselves, and also examples when we did this undoing gender. Yeah, on just to get used to it, to how the way we are thinking, and yeah, we shouldn't be too strict and just try. It's a learning process. Yeah, but maybe it's just maybe you want to try this yourself with your teams, doing gender and undoing gender examples every week in the Showfix.
Sounds like fun. There was
yeah. I think me again. Sorry, I didn't say my name earlier. It's Judith Delaney. As Sarah said, I'm the president of Women in Aerospace Europe Austrian chapter, long name. And I have a company that does space communications and outreach. So what you're saying today is really up my alley and makes me so happy to see so many women saying so many amazing things that are so true in a group where it's important. And we have mentioned language several times, and we mentioned a policy that needs to change several times, but we've only brought on this panel how important it is to change our language and to actually reflect specifically what you said with networking, women often having their elbows out. And there's a really nice analogy for this. It's coming from a German comedian that I'm sure a lot of us know, which is Caroline Kebekus. She calls it the America's Next Top Model effect. There can only be one. Only one can be the next top model. And this is unfortunately something we've been raised with. That when you look at a table full of men, then there can only be one. And you should be happy because also you're never there because you were good, because you were there at the right place at the right time. And how many of us, and this is actually really a question, have heard when they got a promotion, when they got that position, oh, that's really good. So you were really there at the right place at the right time. And moreover, how many times have we accidentally said that, oh, wow, so good that you got the job, but also you moved here just now. So you're at the right place at the right time. So I think one way to really change this is to admit that we are really doing a lot of things wrong ourselves, and to actually that we are part of the problem, because I'll be the first one to admit that I have been jealous of other women and tried to push them out the way because she could only be one. And she was there, but I wanted to be there. And obviously, it's always one place for the table for a woman, and we've made that place, and then there's no place for others. So I think one way to really change it is to challenge ourselves and be uncomfortably honest of how we as women actually feed into the current system, because we do. We really do, and we do with our language as well. And then actively change that and call ourselves out before we call others out. And then actually maybe become the mentor that we needed to be. And I think that's something, if we do that, we're doing a big thing already, because we cannot always rely on policy. We cannot always rely on structures to change if we don't challenge ourselves a little bit. So that's just what I wanted to add. And thank you so much for everything you brought today. This has been so, I don't want to say inspiring, because women are always inspiring, and inspiring often leads to nothing, but it's motivating instead. So thank you very much.
Hello, Maria Teresa Ferretti. I have one comment and one provocative thing to say. I just want to see how you respond. The comment is about children, starting in kindergarten. I love the idea. Children are natural born scientists. They are budding scientists, all of them. When your kid is throwing a glass over the counter and crashing everything and doing a mess, he's doing an experiment. You know, it's fascinating gravity. That's the way I look at it. And so I think it's a general cultural shift, that if we convince the society that science is cool, it's nice, you know, how you do science, how you run experiments, how you control and understand things. Kids love it, and we just have to convince teenagers and young adults that it's something cool to do, right? So you're not nerds. And this will have a positive effect on boys and girls. And this was the comment. And then the provocative thought that I wanted to have, I was really impressed by what you were mentioning about the selection of executive people and what could be the criteria and what is missing in women. And this really reminds me a lot the process also for becoming professors, the process for becoming very successful politicians. The risk that I see is that we are actually selecting women that have male features. So somehow we have decided that the way males behave is the right one, and all women have to adapt to that. So to the extreme of this, you have, people extremely bossy, people that are elbowing, and people that are overselling themselves, even, declaring things that are not true. Why should we women do that? Who has decided that that's the right model? I just want to provoke you and say, maybe we should just change this thing completely and say we need different type of leaders. That's if on the paper they have the right qualifications, even if they don't oversell it, it's still okay. They're gonna do a good job. So how do we go about that? How do we avoid selecting women that are more men than men? Because in the end, that's what sometimes happens. I don't know if you have any comment to that.
Yeah, I can comment on that. As I said in my introduction, my world is very limited because executive search is paid for the requirement what the client asks. And the fact is that most clients who are, let's say, generalizing it, yes, very much, but are more male than female at the moment. And of course, leading discussions, our job is digging a lot into the profile with different stakeholders. But still, it's more males than females, generally speaking, depending on the field. So really very much generalizing now. But having said or having listened to what you say, I strongly believe when not only in executive search, but talking about recruitments in companies, you should be here open for different kinds of approaches. And definitely you will find recruitment companies who are really very autonomous and having a different approach. Executive search is limited. And I do strongly, I'm strongly convinced that it's also a generation effect, because at the moment we are having decision makers, and my decision makers are roughly 40 and above. They were educated at home or having role models at home, very traditional. Female were staying at home or having a part-time job, and the men brought money home. When I look into the generations now getting into C-level positions, very often male are staying in parental leave more and more, and the woman is in the job because she earns more. So there is a trend. It's also seen in science. And there is a small trend, but it's increasing. And also the self-confidence in these generations is differently. So I think over time it will get better. How can we boost that? I strongly believe that we should go and see into startups, recruitment companies having different approaches. But executive search is quite traditional here.
Thank you. So we have one question from our online audience.
Yes, so the question from Zoom is, speaking of wording, we talk about women in science. Do we ever talk about men in science? Maybe the panelists, also the previous, could comment on this fact and whether they think it's useful to continue talking about women in science, or whether we should switch to speak out what they actually are, in brackets, female scientists.
So honestly speaking, I always believe in the competencies, and I would even say people. Yeah, but we have today the women topic. So if I would be straight in my personal opinion, I always would talk about people. But I understand the wording. Perhaps it's also my English, which is not specific enough. But definitely, I would raise it again as the power of language. So I understand the point.
And also, as we, I think, said, it's important to talk about women. It's like quotas. People are like, no, we don't need quotas. It's just bad. I don't feel good about it. But when you really look into it, women have never been put in a position when they didn't have the skills. And so you just have to explain why we do meetings about women, why we do quotas, when we do grants like the one which has been cancelled. They are actually important, and it could be broader because we talked about men and women in a binary sense, but actually gender is not binary. And it's really important to talk about that because non-binary people are discriminated against, but not, as we said, white male.
Yeah, and what I want to add is that maybe this has to do with what I started with, that I see myself as a lifelong learner, yeah, because we are always the same time experts for whatever, for AI or for executive search. But we are also learners, always whole life. Yeah, and we only can learn together from each other and together, men, women, and comes into my mind when I hear all these things. Yeah, this learning together, learning.
Beautiful words to end this wonderful morning session with 3 panels with distinguished experts, even traveling from other countries to come here to discuss with us today. There's one more question, an urgent one.
That's why we are so special.
Hi. Okay, I think we should discuss, we should continue this discussion during lunch. But I really want to say a big thank you to all the people who have been contributing in making this happen, because there is many who you have not actually seen and noticed, but they are behind the scenes and making sure that this thing is running, organizing, making invitations, preparing, and having this all set up. So a big applause for 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 all the organizers. And then a big applause also for our panelists of our last panel. And with this, I would say, let's work on our networking skills during lunch, which I think most of us here know perfectly well. So we can only, make a very improve this. So I can't speak anymore. Sorry. This being said, I wish you a very nice lunch. Thank you for coming. Hopefully, some of these organizations that were here today will make future connections and continue to work together in the future. And let's work for a world where we do not have to talk about this anymore, but we are all equal, and hopefully we will get there. Thank you.
Thanks for the great moderation, Karina.
Ja, das kan is het zo? Ja, Nein, dat zo. Nada, es ist